Africa, historically, sub-Saharan Africa has been fundamental to the global prosperity of the advanced countries. Okay? And Africa had a role to play. It has a role as a raw material producer. We will not allow sub-Saharan Africa to escape that. Okay, we do everything to keep sub-Saharan Africa where it is, also impoverished. It's absolutely vital to the prosperity of everyone else. So let's get clear about that. Okay, and this means all the economic structures, all the global institutions, and the economics we teach everyone is all designed to keep Africa exactly where it is.
And this video is about how the Europeans colonized Africa and kept it impoverished until today. Please subscribe for more content and to grow the channel. This was Europe in the 1880s, and it was going through the first industrial revolution, which led to the rapid change in the European countries. The Industrial Revolution was underpinned by Agricultural Revolution. Agricultural Revolution increased significantly. This meant that there was a huge increase in the food output that supported the expansion and sustained a large population and boosted its economy. The increased use of machines over humans and animal power in farming also meant that less farm workers were needed, and they could leave the land to the industrial towns. Better methods and richer soil also contributed to industrialization by creating the steam engine.
It all began with a kettle. James Watt's aunt was angry. Rather than reading a good book, the 15-year-old sat around the house all day just watching the kettle boil. He'd lift the lid, look inside, see the steam rising, see the steam condensing on the inside of the lid. And what the aunt took as idleness was really the keen attention of a junior scientist, a man who would, one day, invent the world's first really efficient steam engine.
This was an integral machine which powered the factories, locomotives, and ships. The new steam engine used coal and iron both in a construction and as fuel, increasing the demand for the resources. Roads and railways connected all of Europe, allowing goods to be sent over a long distance. But this was becoming too increasingly hard to satisfy the demand for the raw materials required for the industries. And so, the King of Belgium, Leopold II, and 7 other European powers gathered a meeting in Berlin, known as the Berlin Conference, between 1884 to 1885, to discuss the matters of how to colonize Africa. So soon after the meeting, they began colonizing Africa, and they were successful to attain control over much of Africa by the year 1914 through diplomatic pressure, aggressive enticement, and military invasion. Since then, the system began to introduce a monocultural economy for their territories. It also dehumanized African labor force and traders. It forced Africans to work in a colonial plantation at very low wages and displaced them from their lands, leaving Africans with nothing. The system built the roads and the rails and the schools, but the roads and the rails never connected the cities or the countries, but it connected the mines to the ports to transport the minerals outside of Africa. This was the beginning of the scramble for Africa. By the 1950s, schools in Africa has produced an elite number of African nationalist intellectuals, and these African nationalist intellectuals will rival the colonial rule and gain independence.
We were divided. We were divided by the colonizers. What type of a student activist are you? What type of a ground force are you? You say, I don't want colonialism. We want decolonization. Yet you are supporting colonial borders in Africa. We don't want anything that looks like colonialism. We want to be one thing with our sisters in Tanzania, in Nigeria, in Egypt, in DRC, in Sudan, in South Sudan, everywhere else in Africa. We don't want passport, we don't want visa, we must move free of charge.
This mid-20th century is Africa's. This decade is the decade of African independence. Forward then to independence. To independence now. Tomorrow, the United States of Africa.
So, in the 1950s to the 80s were a period of Cold War between the two superpowers, the United States and the USSR. And the European powers was weak after the Second World War. They could not economically afford to resist the African nationalist movement. They came out of the war much poorer than before. And so, ultimately, this led to the weakened colonial system. And so the process of decolonization began. This process was often marred with violence, political turmoil, widespread unrest and organized revolts in both northern and sub-Saharan countries. These countries would be ruled by dictators and military juntas for decades of long civil wars, and some European governments welcomed a new relationship with their former colonies, marking the end of colonization. After colonization, African leaders felt that colonization was a wake-up call, and it was time for Africa to unite. And so, they formed the OAU, the Organization of African Unity, in 1963, and its aim was to promote unity and solidarity of African states, to coordinate and intensify their cooperations and efforts to achieve a better life for the people of Africa, to defend their sovereignty, their territorial integrity and independence, to eradicate all forms of colonialism from Africa, and to promote international cooperations having due regards to the Charter of the United Nations and to the Universal Declarations of Human Rights. But it was not long after the heads of state and the government of the Organization of African Unity, the OAU, issued a certain declaration calling for the establishment of an African Union in 1999, with a view of accelerating the process of integration in the continent to enable Africa to play a rightful role in the global economy while addressing the multifaceted social, economic, and political problems And so in July 2002, the African Union was officially launched, following the decision in September 1999. The real reason why the OAU relaunched was because its main objective was to fight decolonization and ridding the continent of apartheid, which had been the focus of the OAU ever since decolonization. The world organizations and Western powers needed a way to keep Africa where it is.
After colonization ended, we needed new structures to keep these countries where they were. Okay? And the first of those is aid. Okay? We give them aid. Aid for what? Actually, we give them aid to keep repressive regimes in power. That's all. Okay? We're not giving them aid for much more except a little bit of infrastructure to make sure those raw materials get to the ports and aren't gotten out of the ground. But for the most part, we give repressive regimes money and power and guns to keep that system going. This is what it's fundamentally about. All the hypocrisy about transparency and democracy and bullshit like that, it's all bullshit.
And the second structure is debt. One of the examples of debt is that there was a bank that was not known, but it was formed in the 1950s by the IMF, the CIA, and the American State Department. And its only job was to lend money to the developing countries that are raw material producers in order to indebt them. So once the president had taken the cash or the loan, the bank had control over much of the country. And if the president did not take the loan or did not agree to the terms and conditions of the bank would then assassinate the president. And this bank would go from country to country doing the same process over and over again. And the debt structure is not known by many people, but it is a monopoly buying structure. And this is all raw materials and basic agricultural goods produced by developing countries. There are only 4 to 5 Western multinationals that buy all these goods. These Western multinationals collude between them in order to make sure their control is total. What they normally do is that they force all the producers to produce the same product, and these multinationals impose that control on them, and they keep pushing the price to go down. And if the producer does not agree with the price, they blackmail the producer, telling them they would go to another country. And the role of the World Bank is to force the developing countries to eliminate all food subsidies and food support. Ever since then, the African Union is trying to reverse all these structures that stop Africa from growing, like introducing the Continental Free Trade Area. This will allow trade amongst African countries and will boost the socio-economic and transformation and will allow movement of people. This is the first step of achieving the United States of Africa. If you liked this video, please comment and like, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.